Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Skinner here. I hope you guys are all doing well and continue to flourish under these strange times that we are all in. Today, we're going to be moving on in our journey through the SDLC in our SAD class. We're going to be looking at designing interfaces and dialogues. What are our learning objectives for today's class? Well, it says on the screen, describe the guidelines providing feedback and system help. So as users enter data, what feedback can we give to them so that they have a sense of control and comfort that everything is occurring in the way that it should be? We're going to talk about how we design dialogues, a human-computer dialogue. So when we're going through multiple screens, how do we interact between these different screens? How can we design those so they are as user-friendly as possible? We're going to talk about dialogue diagramming in the context of designing dialogues. We're also going to touch on GUIs, graphical user interfaces, and then finally we're going to talk about the guidelines for designing interfaces and dialogues for an internet-based e-commerce system. And then that last bit is going to be tying directly into your assignment, which is going to be involving a hotel website. Okay, without further ado, let's move on. So here we are. We are within the SDLC design phase, and we are doing our dialogues and interfaces, and soon going to get to distributed and internet systems before our last class is on implementation and maintenance. So let's just remind us of the design and the design focus for interfaces and dialogues. So our put my teeth back in. Our interface design focus, as it says, how information is provided to and captured from users. Our dialogue design focus is the interface and the sequence of interface and the displays. It's all about the user needs. And oh look, prototyping again. This use of prototyping is demonstrated throughout the SDLC. It's so critical and so important. And as you see, it's all about the user, and the process is the same time and time again. It makes sense. If you want to have the user at the very heart of what you're designing, because they need to be, because they're going to be using whatever you design, then this is the process that you need to follow. Talk to them, find out what they need, come up with some designs, test it with them, assess the usability, make refinements as needed. Okay, so when we're designing interfaces, what are we interested in? We are first of all interested in structuring the data entry, controlling the data input, providing feedback, and providing help. We've seen this before. The thing we want to talk about today is providing feedback and providing help. So feedback, there are three types of system feedback, and here we have them on the screen. The first one, status information, keeps users informed of what's going on, which is helpful when a user has to wait for a response. So once they've clicked the button, they're waiting for something to come back to them, you need to have something going on to say, yes, we are doing something. You know, if it's only a little circle turning around and around, you need something to give people confidence that everything is happening as it should be. Prompting cues. Okay, so prompting cues, telling users when input is needed and how to provide that input, and then error warning messages, informing users that something's wrong with data entry or the system operation. Let's look at these in a little bit more detail, starting with status information. Okay, so status information, the example they give here, the current customer name and descriptive title. So here we go, especially important during processing operations. Display working message to the user. Give feedback that the system accepted the input, that the input, typo there Skinner, was in the correct form. It's actually, do you know what? It's actually is that bottom line. It's all about reassurance and control to help users to feel in command of the system. If you click a button and you don't see anything happening, how do you know that what is hopefully going to happen is actually happening? You don't have that confidence, that trust, that reassurance. You don't feel you're in control, and you don't want that from a user experience. It's very interesting, isn't it? You're almost trying to replicate human capacity for recognition of a message and getting kind of that feedback, even to like a raised eyebrow or somebody just acknowledging you. You've got to replicate that in an information system. So you kind of take it for granted, right? It's one of those things that you take for granted, but it's still really, really important. And there it says it reassures users that nothing is wrong. So this is all about status. Okay, so what does it have? Prompting cues, telling users when input is needed and how to provide that input. So as it says here, be very specific. You've got to be very specific. You just say ready for input and then have a line. You are not giving them any guidelines about what type of input is required. So give an example, give default values and or formatting information. You can see a good example there. Instead of ready for input, enter customer account number, brackets 123-456-7, and then on the formatting, you can see it there. This is I get very frustrated when I'm entering my credit card or anything like that, and there's no formatting guidelines or anything like that, or if I'm entering my social security number or whatever it is. You know, when you have prompting cues provided, it makes life so much more easier, and you just have greater confidence that the information that you're providing is going to be appropriate. And then the last thing is error and warning messages. So you've got to be specific. You've got to speak in user terms. Oh, I get so frustrated. And even though I've been in the business for many, many years, when I get a help message and they kind of talk back to me in language that I don't understand, I just get very frustrated. Maybe it's because I'm a professor and I have to explain things in relatively simple terms to students to make sure that you guys can all understand conceptually what's going on. But it gets me annoyed. Don't include jargon. Don't scold the user. Please don't scold the user. That's not a good idea at all. Please don't scold the user. I know you won't scold the user, but please don't scold the user. Attempt to guide the user towards resolution. Yeah, so you want to help them. You want to be seen to help, and you've got to give them, it's almost like reassurance and control, like we saw earlier on. You need to do that when there are error or warning messages. And should be in the same format and the same location locale each time. And here we have some example of poor and improved error messages from the book. Poor error message, error 56. I don't know what error 56 is. That wouldn't mean a thing to me. But if you said the file name you typed was not found, press F2 to list valid file names, then I would say, okay, this is fine. I'm going to have greater confidence that I know what I'm doing. Wrong choice. Yeah, okay, that's me being scolded. Data entry error. Not great. The prior entry contains a value outside the range of an acceptable values. They exceeded the domain, the property value set. Oh yes. It said press F9 for list of acceptable values, or file creation error, etc. and so on. You know what I'm saying? It's pretty commonsensical, but you just can't take it for granted. And if you put attention to this, then you're going to get by. And remember what we said earlier on. I gave the example of that most important paper in the MIS field ever, TAM, the Technology Acceptance Model, back in 1989, Professor Fred Davis. It's all about getting users to accept new technology. It really is. And this actually makes a lot of difference in getting users to expect new technology. What about providing help? Okay, so we talk about errors and warning messages and status and prompts and so on and so forth. What about providing help? I find help or applications that provide help really frustrating because they very rarely are fit for purpose for my needs. I go and click on help, and 99 times out of 100, I don't get what I'm looking for. And I think you're probably all the same. Interestingly, at that top line, one of the most important interface design issues ongoing, and you have to think about this from the user's perspective, and too often, I don't think that application designers do so. Okay. It can be at the system level, the screen form level, individual field level. There are multiple levels in which the helps can be provided. Essentially, it's all down to context. It's context-sensitive help. If you access this help screen, when you exit the help screen, you've got to be taken back to where you go to be. Guidelines for designing usable help. There are 3 guidelines: simplicity, organize, or show. SOS. So it's much like a ship sending an SOS message. Simplicity, organize, and show. So simplicity, use short, simple wording, common spelling, complete sentences, tell users what they need to know, and access to other additional information if that's needed. Organize, use lists to break information into manageable pieces, and show, provide examples of proper use and the outcomes of such use. We also have this hypertext-based help, which is standard for most commercial applications. It allows for standardization system help across multiple applications. It helps in user training, helps users selectively access the level of help they need, and it's good for both novice and experienced users accordingly. So there are lots of different types of help. Here we have some of the different types of help. Help on help, a meta level of help. You probably kind of think, oh, how do I get help on help? Okay, how do I then get help on help on help? Well, what happens if I need some help on help on help? I'll shut up, but you understand what I'm saying, right? How do I find out information to tell me how to use the help button? A help on concepts. What is a customer record? Procedures. How do I update a record? Messages. What does invalid file name mean? Menus. What does graphics mean? And so on and so forth. So there are different types of help that we need to think about. So we've looked at designing interfaces already. Now let's explicitly consider designing dialogues. So just to refresh, dialogues is the sequence of information between a user and a system. So the purpose of designing dialogues is, as it says, establishing the sequence of displays that users encounter when working with the system. Okay. Oh, look, we're going through this process of dialogue design involving prototyping again. We're going to design a dialogue sequence, which is going to again be based on user feedback. We're going to build a prototype and then go through this assessing of the usability context. Let me give you an example. Okay, so let's suppose that let's say you work in a marketing department and your marketing manager wants sales and marketing personnel to be able to review the year-to-date transaction activity for a customer. Okay, let me say that again. Your marketing manager wants sales and marketing personnel to be able to review the year-to-date transaction activity for a customer. Basically, we want to see what a customer has done from the beginning of the year to where we are now. Okay, and I want all my sales and marketing personnel to be able to access that information. So you talk to the manager, and in the talking to that manager with her, you agree that a typical dialogue would look like this. So this is a sales and marketing personnel reviewing the year-to-date transaction activity for a customer. This is what they would do. They would first of all request to view individual customer information. They would then specify the customer of interest, select the year-to-date transaction summary display, review the customer information, and leave system. Okay, so that gives you an idea of which of the dialogues, the sequence of information between a user and a system, are going to be looked at and in which order. Okay, so when it comes to kind of designing these guidelines, the guideline designs for these dialogues, what do we need to think about? What do we need to think about? There are 9 different guidelines that we need to consider when we're designing these dialogues, and here they are. First one, consistency. So what does it say? Dialogues should be consistent in the sequence of actions, keystrokes, and terminology, i.e. the same labels should be used for the same operations on all screens, and the location of the same information should be the same on all displays. So be consistent, irrespective of which dialogue you're in, you must be consistent. Shortcuts and sequences allow advanced users to take shortcuts using special keys, Control-C to copy and so on and so forth. And then the natural sequence of steps should be followed. So you've got to have special keys. Feedback should be provided for every user action. Closure, dialogue should be logically grouped to have a beginning, middle, and an end. Makes sense. Error handling, all errors should be detected and reported. Reversal, dialogues should, when possible, allow users to reverse actions, i.e. Undo a deletion. So you want to be able to confirm, data should not be able to be deleted without confirmation. So basically, you want to be able to give the users the ability to back out, and that if they do want to delete data, they need to confirm it before it actually happens. Control, the user essentially should feel in control at all time. And then finally, ease, easy to use and navigate. So easy to enter information and move between screens. You kind of put that all together and you'll have a very good designed level of dialogue interaction. We have this thing called dialogue diagramming, which is this formal method for designing and representing the dialogues. We use box and line diagrams. So essentially, we can actually replicate the interactions between different dialogues. So for each dialogue, we have this rectangular box, which is split up into 3 different parts. Okay. The top part, the top section, is this unique display reference, and it gives a number, a unique number, and it's used by other displays to reference the current display. And we'll look at some examples very shortly. The middle is just the name or description of the display, and then the bottom is the reference numbers of displays that can be accessed from the current display. So dialog diagrams have only one symbol, a box with 3 sections. Each box represents one display. All connecting arrows between displays are bidirectional. You can see an example here. This is just to point out that when we are interacting between different displays, different dialogues, we can do so at a sequence level, an iteration level, or at a selection level. So sequence is just a sequence of displays, right? When you move from one to the next, from display A into display B, okay? Selection is when you select one display over another. So when you get to display B, you can actually select display C, display D, or display E. So when you select one display over another, that is selection. And then iteration is the repeated use of one display. So let's say you went A to B to E, and then E was like, you had to enter a lot of data on this display time and time and time again. You would go through this iterative process of using display E. So here we have an example, excuse me, an example dialog diagram. So you can see the login screen at the top has a 0 because it is our first screen. We have a name or description display in the middle, the login screen, and then the reference number of the return displays. In this case, it's just the symbol because it's the first screen. If we move then to main menu, which is the next screen, reference number 1, we can see the main menu is display. We can then see that the reference numbers of displays that can be accessed are 0, i.e. the login screen, and the system as well, because this is one of the earliest screens that is going to be accessible by our user community. If I then go from main menu, number 1, we then have a selection of 4 screens. It can either be 2, 3, 4, or 5, individual customer information, order status, salesperson information, or reports. So you can then see that 2 is accessible from either 0 or 1, and so on and so forth. And so hopefully as a result of all this, you can see the interaction, the relationships between different dialogues. So also you can see under 2, you see where it goes select customers 2.1, customer information 2.1.1. It's a little bit like what we talked about before, where you, as you go down through the next levels of dialogues, you can see the relationship between the previous dialogue and the current dialogue. Okay, so I think that's all fine. What else do we have? Ah, yes, building prototypes. Let's talk about prototypes a little bit more. In your last assignment, pretty good, pretty well done. A little bit light on areas, talking about prototypes, but generally not too bad. When it comes to building prototypes, of displays and dialogues. Typically, we're going to be using a graphical development environment, so .NET or Microsoft Visual Studio.NET or Borland's ES, and so on and so forth. Any other easy to use input and output design utilities. Again, we bring back as usability. We have to think about usability, and just to remind ourselves what we mean by usability, this overall evaluation of how a system performs in supporting a particular user for a particular task. Again, the objective for usability, designing forms, reports, and all human interactions. Characteristics of usability: speed, can you complete a task efficiently? Accuracy, does the output provide what you expect? And satisfaction, do you like using the output? So the question now becomes, if you're just designing a graphical user interface, a graphical interface, right? What are the issues that you're going to experience, and how, more importantly, how do you deal with these issues? What are the issues and how do you deal with them? Let's talk about how you deal with issues generally, okay? So when you're solving these issues, there are two recommendations. First of all, become an expert user. Understand how other applications have been designed. Think about standards, think about look and feel, think about reuse. Remember we talked about reuse beforehand? Think about the available resources, all right? So become familiar with standards for menus and forms, understand how available resources can be used as well. So these two rules, becoming an expert user of the GUI environment and understanding available resources, emerge as composing the first step to becoming an effective GUI developer, okay? So this is all very good. Oops, daisy, I pressed the wrong button. Let me just check something. So here we have some of the design standards. If you're going to be a graphical user interface designer, here we have some design standards that you would need to follow, that if you do follow would make the interaction between the human and the computer much more effective. And it's, again, it's all common sense. So top left, file menu item is always first item if present. Edit menu item is always second item, and we take it for granted. Help menu is always the last item. What else do we have here? Solid circle shows that an item is selected. So if you're choosing zooming in or zooming out, you can see here 100% is our choice. Ellipses, brackets, dot, 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 show that a pop-up menu will appear if selected. Right arrow shows that an item leads to a submenu, of course. No check marks indicate that a command will be executed if selected. So again, it is all pretty common sense. And knowing you lot, the work that you do in your own time, this is probably some of the things that you do anyway and you know about all the time. So what are the common properties of windows and forms in a GUI environment that can be active or inactive? Here we have different properties that you guys need to know about. Modality. Modality is the sense that users are required to resolve a request for information before being able to proceed, i.e. you need to cancel or save before closing a window, okay? Resizable allows users to resize a window or form. Movable allows users to move a window or form. Maximize, full screen, minimize form and icon. And a system menu allows a window or form to also have a system menu to directly access system level functions. Okie dokie. So let's talk a little bit more about designing web interfaces and dialogues. Okay, so designing web interfaces and dialogues. In this kind of concept, you have to appreciate this is probably one of the most central, important, critical design activities. All right, this is where the customer is going to interact with the company. Therefore, you need to take lots and lots and lots of care in design. All right, so I think about the companies I interact with, mostly my banks actually. If I interact with my bank accounts, you want to have confidence that everything is designed well, that you know what to do, that you have confidence that everything we've talked about already is going through very, very well. So what are some limitations to this kind of context? Here we have some typical web limitations. A single click-to-act method of loading static hypertext documents, okay. Limited capabilities of most browsers support finely grained user interactivity. Limited agreed-upon standards for encoding content and control mechanisms. Lack of maturity of web scripting and programming languages. Limitations in commonly used, and so on and so forth. Essentially, what are the common issues? Some of the common issues in website design. Let's kind of take it down to its basic level. Here we have them. Okay, common issues in web design: opening new browser windows, breaking or slowing down the back button, complicated URLs, orphan pages that don't go anywhere, being able to, it's difficult to scroll through navigation pages, lack of navigation support, hidden links, links that don't provide enough information, buttons with no click feedback, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's look at some of these in a little bit more detail. When you're opening a new browser window, so these are some of the common errors when designing the interface and dialogues of websites. So let's just very quickly touch on some of them. So opening a new browser window, avoid opening a new browser window when a user clicks on a link unless it's clearly marked that a new window will be opened. Users may not see that a new window has been opened, which will complicate navigation, especially moving backward. And so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go through them all now, just go through some of these. Let's have another look at one. Hidden links. Make sure you leave a border around images that are links. Don't change link colors from normal defaults, and avoid embedding links within long blocks of text, and so on and so forth. Again, it's pretty commonsensical. I don't think there's anything there that is too concerning. Just read it, make sure you understand it. There could well be a question on this in the exam. The last thing to just touch on for this class is this concept of cookie crumbs and the need to incorporate cookie crumbs into an interface. What do we mean by cookie crumbs? This technique of placing tabs on a web page to show a user the current location on a site in relation to the home page. So essentially, all you're doing is you're showing the direction back that you would need to go through from where you are to get back to the home page. Okay, it's kind of this visual navigation so users can see how to get back from where they are. Again, it's about reassurance, control, confidence and trust in the system that you are able to do what you want and go where you want to be where you want in a mature system. You wouldn't see in such a mature system if it wasn't there, but is necessary, right? So the point I'm trying to make is do focus on having this understanding and being able to share that with your user community so that they can move around and know where they are in regards to a central point, i.e. the home page, as well as you can. Okay, so your assignment for this class, here we go. I want you to design a sample data entry screen for our hotel registration system using the data entry guidelines provided in table 11.6. Oh, very good. I'm going to try and get to where I am. When possible, support your design with arguments for the design choices you made. Number 2, examine and evaluate the help system for an application that you use in terms of the guidelines for designing usable help. So what is the help system? Or what is the application, first of all? What is the help system? How good is it? Does it do what we talk about in table 11.11? If not, where does it fall short? Also, if you want to, you can add recommendations to what changes you would make to the help system so that it's better fit for purpose. Okay, I hope you understand that assignment. A pretty short class today, which is good. I look forward to receiving your answers in due course next week. Until then, take care of yourselves, stay happy. If you've got any questions, please reach out to me and I'll be very happy to speak to you then. All right, thanks very much, bye.